Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And this podcast, Brian and I are going to tell you how to win in Week 15 of the fantasy season. Let's get it. Now, I don't have your friend and my best friend Blake Creamer here with me, but as I want to do when Blake stands me up on a night like this, I'm auditioning a new potential best friend. We've got Brian of Trade Talks fame in the building here tonight. How's it going, Brian?
I'm doing well. I will do my best to fill in Blake's shoes here. If you refer to me as Blake at any point, I'll just roll with the punches here. But happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sounds good to me. I am currently fresh off. I'm buzzing a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I'm fresh off a come from behind 6-5 beer league win. We were down 4-0 early, and we came all the way back. Won at 6-5. I might need a little bit of that magic in some of my fantasy matchups this week, if I'm being honest about it. But we'll hopefully get there, and hopefully we'll get everybody set up to win Week 15. And hopefully there will be less Newsies in Week 15 than we've got here this week. But Brian, why don't you lead us in and get to some Newsies?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a ton here, so I'm going to do my best to kind of rip through them here. Starting off, we got a couple of injuries. We got Troy Terry missed Thursday's game. We got Zane Prek, who just joined the team, and he's out hurt now. And then Eberle, if you had him to start the week, hopefully you dropped him in time or had some spot in your IR because he's out with an upper body injury as well. Marchand and Jeek are also day to day right now. It is undisclosed, so we're not really sure what's going on with them. I did see a report with the Marchand that it doesn't look too serious, so hopefully they'll have him back here shortly. And then we also got Travis Konechny. Will be a game time decision Saturday. So if you have Konechny, he is playing. Make sure you get him into your lineups. And again, another injury because we're going to keep ripping through these here today. It's that time of year where everyone starts getting hurt. Kopitar is out again on Friday, so he didn't play today, Friday, the day that we are doing this podcast, and the LA Kings certainly could have used him. And moving on here, a couple more injuries we saw. I don't know if you saw the Carter Hart injury yesterday, but that was super unfortunate. I don't know, Nate, did you watch that game the other day?
I didn't watch the game, but I did see like the overhead view of him just like trying to go around and just clearly in a lot of discomfort. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to even tell who injured him. There was like 50 people. Seemed like there was 50 people in his crease when he got hurt. So that sucks to see. Hopefully he's okay, but right now he's out with a lower body injury. Connor Bedard makes his return Friday. Today, don't think he put up any points, but we're happy to have him back. Points will start coming with Connor Bedard, so I know he'll be on a vengeance tour after not getting selected for Team Canada. And then moving on here, we got a couple more things. If you haven't heard yet, there is an awful lot of drama going on in Ottawa. The Ottawa Senators, it seems like there's every 5 to 10 years, there's always something. He had all the all the drama with the team, with the Erik Karlsson days, and now there's drama with Brady Tkachuk. There's Allmark. So Allmark is now on the non-rostered injury reserve list. So he's not playing. He's out. And then Nylander, we got a couple of asterisks here. He may return Saturday. Coach Berube did have a couple of pressers where he did mention that Nylander seems like he could play, but doesn't want to commit to it yet. So make sure you're keeping your eyes peeled and wide open for Nylander, because if he's back, I think will want to get in on the streaking lease here. We're starting to play some pretty good hockey. So check your lineups. And then a couple more newsies here. We got Wilson, who is actually put on to IR, but do not despair. It was retroactive, so it's going to be a very short-lived stint here. I think he will be back on Sunday. He was just put onto IR. We expect him to miss Friday's game. Likely he'll be back on Sunday, so keep your eyes peeled there. A couple more injuries because, like we said, it is that time of year. Blake Coleman left the game Thursday, and he's day to day. Again, something that doesn't seem to be serious, but if you have him in a couple spots, keep your eyes there because he could play again this weekend. And then Pionk is also out Friday. He missed, I guess he blocked a shot, a single shot, which he's good for, and he was gone. So that's really unfortunate. And then to wrap up the Newsies here, we got Spencer Knight. He missed a game, but don't worry, he's not injured like everyone else on this list. It was just an illness. So he is out, and hopefully we'll see him back. Maybe actually, yeah, they do play tomorrow, so maybe tomorrow, maybe early next week, but just out with an illness. If he's as sick as Nate, he might be out a little bit longer.
Yeah, I can not imagine trying to play a professional sport feeling the way I've felt over the last little bit. But if anybody could do it, I'm sure Spencer Knight could do it. Yeah, this has been quite a week for injuries. I posted on Twitter just like screenshots of my one team.
I
I
saw that.
have literally 8 players in the IR Plus right now: Kopitar, Landeskog, Wilson, Mazi Kachuk, Barkov, who I'm just hanging on to just in case, but Hedman, Eberly, and Pionk, who I literally picked up just to try to stream him over the weekend, and then it turns out he's not playing. So yeah, it's been a week in that regard. But we can move past the Newsies for now. Hopefully, we've captured it all and we won't need to revisit anything come Sunday. But yeah, quite a Newsies segment this week. Let's move
So
over.
Nate,
Yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
ask you a question before you get into the schedule attack here. Are you just excited, just as excited as the Canadian Olympic teams for that Olympic break, just for the sake of your roster, the health of that roster?
It's getting to that point. Yeah, I could really use a break for some of my teams just to get healthy. That's for sure. I'm sure there are plenty of other fantasy managers listening to this who are feeling that pain as well. Yeah, let's get into the schedule attack here. So this upcoming week, it is a bit of a different week. We do have 9 games on Monday, which is usually a light night, but this week will be a heavy night. Tuesday, there's another 10 games. Wednesday, 4 games. Thursday, 10 games. Friday, 5 games. Saturday, 13 games. And Sunday, 3 games. In total, that's 54 games played, so it's a normal week in terms of the actual number of games played, but definitely not a normal week in terms of how it all shakes out. There's only one team that has a Sunday Monday back to back. It's going to be the New Jersey Devils. So I don't know if anybody's going to be brave enough to stream anyone from New Jersey with what's going on there right now. There are 8 teams that actually have the Monday, Tuesday back to back to open the week. So if you have open spots on both Monday and Tuesday, you can take advantage of players from teams like Carolina, Dallas, Detroit, Edmonton, Montreal, Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Vancouver. You're going to get that Monday, Tuesday back to back and put yourself in a pretty decent spot to open the week. There are another 5 teams that play Monday, Wednesday. So yeah, almost half the league is playing 2 games by Wednesday. So pretty good stuff there for fantasy purposes. Buffalo, LA, New Jersey, New York Rangers, Philadelphia, and Seattle are those 6 teams, actually. That's 6 teams. So I'll change that. Then there's only one team that goes Wednesday, Friday off nights. That's going to be LA. So they continue a good schedule this week, a good schedule next week as well. 3 teams with Friday, Sunday off nights, so avoiding that heaviest night of the week, the Saturday with 13 games. Detroit, St. Louis, and Tampa Bay are those 3 teams. Looks a little something like this, courtesy of Frozen Tools if you're watching over on YouTube. I do think it's going to be more important to focus on the back end of the week just because it's a lot more loaded up. But that being said, you can, if your opponents are not streaming hard, then you can kind of build yourself up a games played advantage early in the week and potentially coast to a bit of a victory in the back half. But in terms of identifying the teams that you really want to target, definitely having some of those late week streamers from Detroit, St. Louis, and Tampa Bay to avoid the super heavy Saturday there, I think is going to be pretty important. Anything stick out to you about this schedule here, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule for next week, like my first thought is, oh my God, I want to go out and grab some Edmonton Oilers, but they play on the Monday, Tuesday. A lot of teams, like we just said, play on the
Mm-hmm.
Monday, Tuesday. They play on a Thursday, which is a busy day as well, and then the Saturday, and then the Sunday. And like make sure you look at your lineups before you make these decisions, of course, because
Yeah.
yeah, that could definitely hurt you for sure in this week. But definitely, there will be a lot of options here to stream for the week.
Yeah, and we'll get into that when we get into some of the best teams to stream from. First, though, we got to lower some expectations. We got to talk about teams that are basically the worst teams to stream, the worst schedules of the week, and those teams that you might potentially want to drop some players from if they're kind of the fringe of your roster. So the two teams with the worst schedule on the week are Colorado and San Jose. They both play 2 games with one off night. So from Colorado, I think you're looking at guys like Brent Burns, probably Sam Malinsky. Malinsky was playing on the even strength pairing with Kale McCarr with Devon Taves out. So that's something to keep an eye on. He didn't end up getting, like big time minutes as a result of that. Might have been a fact, partly due to the fact that they were just crushing that game and it was kind of a weird game overall. But he only played 16-19 despite having that deployment with McCarr. So it seems like that deployment might not actually result in just like a ton of ice time for him, which is obviously what we'd be hoping for if we're looking at Sam Malinsky as a guy to hang on to with Devon Taves out. So I'll toss it to you, Brian. Brent Burns has some good stuff going on under the hood, and Sam Malinsky is getting that deployment, playing with McCarr, which obviously seems like a good spot in theory. Are either of these guys of interest to you to hold through a tough 2 game week?
You know what? To be honest, I'd be dropping both of them. I think in a week like this week, you can definitely drop them, and if you need a spot on D, like you can definitely find that option this week. It's a great week to stream. So yeah, I'd be dropping them in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. Brent Burns has had a nice little season. Like he's on an 11 goal, 40-point pace. Over the last 5 games, he's second in shots per 60 amongst all defensemen, 16th in individual expected goals for per 60. He's always been a bit of a chucker from the back end, always willing to wind it up from back
Mhm.
there. It's not resulting in, the most outlandish point totals or anything, but he's getting about 19 minutes a night. I wouldn't fault somebody for trying to hang on to Brent Burns, especially if they're kind of thin on their waiver wire for defense as well, and there's nobody out there who is really going to move the needle. But definitely in terms of optimizing, like let's say, for example, Matthias Ekholm, who we're going to talk about, is out there. He's going to give you 5 games this week versus Brent Burns giving you 2 games. To me, that's kind of a no-brainer. So there are definitely going to be some scenarios out there where I'd heartily endorse the dropping of a Brent Burns. Let's move over to San Jose. Over there, you're probably looking at guys like Tyler Toffoli, William Eklund, Dmitry Orlov, and Igor Chernyshov. Obviously, these are guys who are getting some Celebrini exposure. Orlov's on the top power play currently with John Klingberg out, although it seems like Klingberg is probably not that far from return from the very vague stuff I could find online about his injury. So that's something to keep an eye on as far as Orlov is concerned. Eklund has been playing on an even strength line and on the power play with Celebrini, and obviously that's where you want to be in terms of fantasy. Toffoli has been on the second line, but on the top power play, so he's getting some Celebrini exposure that way. Chernyshov, the opposite. He's on that even strength line with Eklund and Celebrini, but not on the top power play. So, of this group, what are you thinking? Are there guys here that are just too good to drop, even in a tough week, or are you thinking about dropping each and every one?
Yeah, great question. To be honest, I think looking at those guys, I would my first thought I want to hold on to Eklund. I think he's a good fit with Celebrini. And realistically, what you should be doing is making sure when you're looking at your opponent, you set your lineups, see if you have a game's advantage to start, if you can afford to hold on to a San Jose player, and then you can make that call. But of the San Jose players, I'd look to hold Eklund. I would drop Toffoli. I'd drop Chernyshov. I would drop Orlov. Like I heard, like similar things, like speculation, like Klingberg might be back soon. If he is, then he'll be PP1 again. Then Orlov's, his value gets nuked right there. So
Mm-hmm.
of the four, maybe just Eklund.
Yep. I think that's a fair take. I like what Foley's got going under the hood last little bit. 14th shots per 60, fifth individual expected goals for per 60, but he is playing less than 60 minutes a night, which obviously takes a little bit of the shine off of those numbers for you. But yeah, it's a good spot for him. in terms of chance generation, at least. Definitely, if you're away from Celebrini at even strength, you can't count on too much
Mhm.
in terms of the actual offense there. Chernyshov, I definitely think you can drop. He's 319th in shots per 60, 210 in individual expected goals for per 60 over the last five. I will say the schedule there for San Jose is that they play Thursday, Friday. So they have kind of a weird schedule. So it might be a situation where you could drop them and then grab them back for that Thursday, Friday, and then maybe continue holding on to them after that, depending on how your week is going and whatever other factors you're looking at for your lineup. So just something a little bit unique about their schedule. Whereas, Colorado plays on the Monday, but then they don't play again till the Friday. So it's really tough to hang on for just a couple of games across the whole week like that. So, yeah, overall, tend to agree. Eklund is the only one I'm definitely hanging on to, and then the others are much more situation dependent. Let's keep going and talk about the 10 teams that play 3 games played but have 0 off nights. We'll do this as a bit of a would you drop. I've given my answers and I'll read them off here, and then Brian, I'll toss it to you and you can agree or contest my answers as you see fit. So let's start over in Boston. For hanging on, I would put Elias Lindholm in that category. And for dropping, I would drop Pavel Zacha. I think that one's pretty obvious. Nikita Zadorov, I think, is a player that a lot of people will hang on to in a Bangers League. But even in a Bangers Cats League, I think I would be comfortable dropping Nikita Zadorov. I don't think he's a difference maker in terms of his Banger Cats categories. I think you can stream a lot of what he brings to the table pretty consistently. So that's where I'm at. Lindholm, just a little bit more juice. He's got 5 points in the last 5 games here. Zaka has really been falling off, hasn't been getting much Pasternak exposure. And Zadorov, as I mentioned, I think he's just a little bit too close to streamer level for me to hang on to through a tough week if he is the bottom of my roster.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I'll have to agree with that. Lindholm, I like what Lindholm's done recently, so he's been playing well. I'd like to hold on to him. Zaka, I drop him in a heartbeat. He seems like he's very boom or bust sometimes, so I'm
Yeah.
fine on a week like this to get rid of him. And Zadorov, like I don't even think I'd even give it two thoughts. Like I would drop him in a heartbeat, especially in a week like this. There's going to be games, a ton of games every single day. Like you could find someone who's going to give you peripherals that Zadorov does well, but on a week like this, like just 3 games from Zadorov isn't going to be enough to move the needle for me.
All right, let's move over to Calgary. I am going to say no to dropping Nazem Kadri still. I know he has, I just looked, he has 1 point in his last 9 games, and it's an assist. It has been a really, really tough run for Kadri. I speculated before that maybe, the trade talk circling Calgary could be potentially affecting him. I saw another article came out today, I think it was Pierre LeBrun, that was saying that Kadri kind of thinks he could stay, but he's kind of open to it if he's going to a contender. So in my mind, if Calgary continues to trend back and like where they're at right now, they would have to jump a lot of teams to make some noise in the wild card race. It's still possible, but it might be, in the next couple of weeks that really comes home to rest, where they're like, yeah, there's just not much of a chance that we're doing this year. And then Kadri could be on the move. And honestly, at this point, I think that would be net beneficial for Kadri. Calgary is having a real tough time generating offense. In terms of guys I would drop Blake Coleman, even if he is healthy and returns quickly from that injury we spoke about earlier. Huberdeau, who's been just kind of terrible as of late, and for most of the season, to be quite frank. And the other guys, like Backlund was hot for a bit. Coronado still has 4 points in his last 5 games, all assists, but all these guys I would feel pretty comfortable dropping. You got any quibbles with any of my takes there, Brian?
Yeah, no, I think Kadri, I would absolutely want to keep holding on to. It's funny, we actually just talked about him on the trade talk last episode, and as someone that you want to kind of look to target.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, even if he is cold, last year he had a very, very good second half of the season, was really poor in the beginning. That's someone I would rather have on my team, even in a cold slump, because if I drop him, I don't want someone else to pick him up. And then if there is a chance that he gets traded to a contender, I want him on my team. So definitely no to Kadri. And I think it's going to be very similar to the rest of these teams that have just the 3 days on busy nights. Like I'm going to say, yes, dropping Coleman, Huberto, Backlund, Coronado, all those guys. I wouldn't give it a second thought.
All right, let's move over to Chicago. I'm going to say no to dropping either of Tyler Bertuzzi or Artyom Levshunov, but I am going to say yes to dropping Ryan Donato, Davu Teravainen, or Andre Burakovsky if they are that guy that opens up a streamer spot for you and allows you to make a lot of improvements in terms of your games played on the week. So always the caveat that, it has to make sense for your lineup. It has to be the actual bottom of your roster guy compared to everybody else. But if that's your case, I would feel not too bad about dropping Donato, Teravainen, or Burakovsky. Burakovsky's been hot as of late. Entering the game tonight, he had 6 points in his last five, and he was playing on a line with Bedard, so obviously that feels pretty good. But I in a week like this, if he's not making your lineup on the heavy nights, I'm just never gonna feel bad about dropping a guy who's not making my starting lineup on heavy nights. So that's where I'm at. Anything that sticks out to you there? Are you gonna stick up for Burakovsky like Blake would?
Yeah, you know what? I'll have a little bit of a rebuttal here, just because the Chicago guys, they play on Monday. So
Yep.
if you can get those guys in on a Monday, then that's great. And then I would consider dropping them from there. So again, it's really important to kind of look at your matchups, look at your schedule, what that looks like. So for me, it depends also what kind of league you're in. A 12-team league, I think you can drop everyone except for Bertuzzi. 14 teams or anything, or if it's very competitive, you probably want to hold on to Bertuzzi and Levshunov as well. But same things as the other guys. I dropped Donato, Teravainen, and Burakovsky in a heartbeat, regardless if they've been hot or not. I just think there's a better way that you can kind of maximize your games played, maximize your week, so you can actually, outpace your opponent.
Yep. Sounds good to me. Let's move over to Columbus. I am going to say no to dropping Adam Fantilli and Dmitry Voronkov right now for myself personally. Voronkov's ice time was down pretty significantly, but it's come up in the last little bit. And under the hood, he's still been doing some pretty good things. In the last game against Vegas, he was playing on that top line with Fantilli and Marchenko. Obviously, a pretty good spot to be. I am going to say you can drop Boone Jenner and Sean Monahan despite the recent success in the last game. I just feel a little bit uncertain that it's going to continue for any length of time. Um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think you have to by any stretch, but I'm not convinced that it's going to continue to, accelerate from here and get better from here. They've also been doing some really weird stuff with the power play as of late there in Columbus. Last game, they tried a unit of Charlie Coyle, Sean Monahan, Kirill Marchenko, Kent Johnson, and Zach Werenski. And then the second unit was Boone Jenner, Dmitry Voronkov, Adam Fantilli, Damon Severson, and Ivan Provorov. Uh, that's just a true smorgasbord approach to blending your power play, and shockingly, it didn't score any goals. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's where I'm at with Columbus. It's a tough look right now, and I'm hopefully we'll get a little bit better intel from this Colorado game that they have this weekend, and maybe we'll be able to make a little bit of a better formed decision on some of these players. But where are you at this moment, Brian?
Yeah, like looking at those guys, the hate on Jenner, unbelievable. The guy he's been pretty good. Like I'm playing against him a couple times or in a couple leagues this week, and he's hurting me. Like I'm like, come on, who is this guy? He doesn't. This isn't him. But I think again, it's very important of what type of league you're in. I think someone like Boone Jenner actually offers a lot of value. He's hitting a lot, he's blocking a lot. Still, that carries a lot of weight. So I would say maybe as a last resort, you can drop those guys. But my first take would be to not drop Boone Jenner. I'd be on the fence for Monahan, just because he has been putting up points recently. Just got back from an injury. We don't like, it's kind of what Monahan's mo. He plays well, he doesn't play well. It's like hot or cold. So
Hmm.
I think I'd hold on to Jenner. I definitely keep Fantilli. Voronikov is another guy that I would be on the fence about dropping as well. As a last resort, I think there's guys like we talked about the previous teams. I drop those guys first, but the Columbus guys, especially if they're going to shuffle up their power plays, don't even know what to make of that. Like hopefully they go back to some stability. Yeah, I think that's what I would do. Definitely holding on to Jenner and Fantilli, and then Veronica Monahan a little on the fence.
Right. Heading over to Minnesota, where I'm going to give a flat no to anyone requesting to drop Matt Zuccarello, the Zucchini Man. You can't do it. I will say yes and give my blessing to people dropping Marcus Johansson. Brock Faber is the one that might be the toughest of all of these players for me to decide what to do with. On one hand, he has 5 points in the last 5 games, skating 24 minutes a night. Underlying metrics individually and the individual side are pretty good. 23rd shots per 60, 20th individual expected goals for per 60. But the on ice stuff is not as good. 95th in on ice expected goals for per 60. Obviously, Quinn Hughes has arrived and taken over the top power play, so that's not really in the cards for Faber. And so I think there are definitely some scenarios, even in 12 team leagues, where I would consider dropping Brock Faber, but it would have to be a spot where I was pretty confident in what I was replacing him with moving forward. So, yeah, that one is probably the toughest one for me. I just kind of don't believe it still with Brock Faber after he's been a pumpkin for so many seasons, it feels like at this point. And then all of a sudden he's like scoring lots of goals and taking lots of shots this year for a pretty sustained amount of time at this point. But I just keep waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin. I don't know. Maybe I'm living in the past, Brian. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think Brock Faber saw that Quinn Hughes trade comes to Minnesota, and he looks at Quinn straight in the eye and he goes, "Listen, you're not him. This is my team. I'm him. Let me show you how it's done." No, I think Brock Faber is definitely reaping the benefits of playing on a pair with Quinn Hughes. Like that definitely doesn't hurt.
Mhm.
But I don't understand the hate on the Zucchini man. Like he's barely rostered still, and he
It's true.
plays on a line with Kaprizov, that top power play. We know how stacked that is. Yeah, I'm holding on to the Zucchini Man, or sorry, as Blake would like to say, the Zucchini Man. Right? We
There
got to
we go.
give him the shout out. I'll hold on to Zuccarello. I would definitely drop Johansson and Faber. I think similar to the Columbus guys, I'd be very much on the fence. It would be kind of like a last resort for me to drop him, just because of that exposure to Quinn Hughes there.
All right. Next up, we have the New York Islanders. Right now, I'm going to say no to dropping Emil Heineman. He has seemingly become an absolute favorite of Coach Patrick Waugh there. He was playing on a line with Matthew Barzell and on the top power play in the last game here. And he skated, I'm going to look it up because it was a crazy number, 22 minutes and 45 seconds in this latest game. So if you're getting those kind of minutes and you're playing a bunch of them alongside Matthew Barzell over there in New York, like I'm gonna stay pretty interested. His underlying numbers are not really anything to write home about, but they're not like truly offensive either. 189th shots per 60, 177 individual expected goals for per 60. So yeah, it's nothing crazy in either direction there. I'd like it to be higher, but I feel like playing with Barzell, if that continues for any length of time, could be a real feather in the cap of Heineman.
Mm.
Trying to hang on there. Anders Lee not getting nearly the same deployment, under 14 and a half minutes average time on ice in the last 5 games. Jonathan Drouin seemed like he was trending towards being like one of their, I don't know, power play aces earlier in the season. Got himself injured and hasn't really ever picked that back up. Last game was playing on a line with Jean Gabriel Peugeot and Simon Holmstrom, which is probably not going to cut it in terms of 5v5 production. So yeah, Anders Lee, Jonathan Drouin, anybody else on the Islanders, I think I'm good with cutting, but I am thinking about keeping the Heine man.
The Heine man, yeah. I would have to agree. I like the Heine man. I like what he's brought this year. And I feel like Lee and Duran are guys you can find on the waiver wires every single week. They're on someone's roster for a week, they're off it the next. So with that in mind, I wouldn't think give it two thoughts to drop Lee or Duran, but definitely hold on to Heine man.
All right, heading over to Pittsburgh now. There's no way you can drop Evgeny Malkin after watching that one-time bomb from the right circle there last night. That was fun to see. Ricard Raquel also still not like incredibly highly rostered, but I'm not dropping him either. Line one, power play one there. I will say yes to Anthony Mantha, who was bumped off power play one to make room for Malkin, and also Chris Letang, who in my mind this year is kind of fully just become an average kind of fourth-ish defenseman on your squad. And those are guys that I feel like you can replace a lot of the time if you're being diligent on your waiver wires, in especially in like 12-team leagues. Maybe if you go deeper than that, you might be a little more reticent to drop a guy like Chris Letang, who should end up scoring roughly around the 43 points that he's currently on pace for. I think that makes some sense. Maybe a little less, but in that range with decent peripherals, playing a lot of minutes, you could do worse. But yeah, if it makes sense for your team this week, I wouldn't feel bad about dropping Chris Letang. I don't think there's some major ceiling potential that you're missing out there.
Mhm. Yeah, for me, I'm looking at Pittsburgh and just trying to find out who's on that top power play because I think they all think they're like mid 20s in their prime right now, and they're
Yeah.
just they won't stop scoring. So I'm holding on to Raquel. He plays on that line with Crosby and Rust. We know how good that line is, and obviously that top power play. Same with Malkin. But yeah, to your point, I'm dropping Letang and Mantha. I think you can find a replacement for what Letang brings on the waiver wire, and I think you can find someone that's better than Mantha, even despite his recent success. I think you can find someone else who gets hot and maybe has a couple more games than Mantha does this week.
All right, next up, Utah Mammoth. I'm going to say no to dropping Nick Schmaltz or JJ Paterka, but I will say yes to dropping Sean Dursey. And potentially controversially, I will say yes to dropping Lawson Krause as well. Entering tonight's game, he did have 5 points in the last 5 games. And in the game tonight, Lawson Krause did have another goal and an assist, skated 18 minutes. I can see why people would want to hang on to Lawson Krause. He is currently playing on that line with Schmaltz and Keller, which is obviously a great spot to apply your trade for fantasy. But I also think just looking at some of the underlying stats, 276th in shots per 60, 284 individual expected goals for per 60. This is a guy who is definitely just being buoyed by his line mates in a lot of ways, and I think probably the shine wears off next week. And so again, it's a guy that you might not be starting, and if you're not starting him, why you're hanging on to him when it's a guy who's really only had this deployment for a few games now and just as likely won't have it by the time you're starting him in your lineup again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to agree here. You definitely can't drop Nick Schmaltz, especially even after tonight when he put up 3 points tonight. He's got some pretty good teammates he's playing with, so I don't. I would like to hold on to Nick Schmaltz there. JJ Paterka, again, he plays on that line with Nick Schmaltz, I believe, as the recent deployment. I like that lineup there for him, but he would actually be someone I'd be on the fence just because like JJ Paterka, he doesn't do anything else for you if he's not scoring. So if he's scoring, he's
Mm-hmm.
hot. Ride with him for sure. Otherwise, I'd be fine with dropping off Paterka. Sean Dursey has also been on a tear of late. He's been putting up points. It seems like every single game. But I think just like a couple of the other guys, you could probably drop him. And then lastly, Lawson Krause, like he's playing with Dylan Gunther. He scored a goal and an assist tonight, which you love to see. Put up a couple of hits as well. So take a look at your league settings, I think, and then make a decision. I think this someone that I would have maybe not borderline. I think he'd be just over the fence. I'd already be booting him, but I would give it a second thought.
Yeah, that's a fair point there. So yeah, the lines, just to recap from this game against St. Louis here, looks like it was Paterka on the Gunther line with Baron
Okay.
Hayton at center, and then Kraus is up with Schmaltz and Keller. So good spot for Kraus at the moment, but yeah, I feel like it's just as likely that by midweek next week he's somewhere else entirely
Yeah.
in the lineup, and obviously it'd be tougher to do stuff for fantasy from there. All right, over to Washington. I am going to say a hearty no to dropping Ryan Leonard. I think this is a guy whose stars ascending in the league, and the Capitals and Spencer Carberry, the coach, are finally starting to realize just how good this guy can be
Mhm.
if they give him some ice time. So I think that I mean, I'm hoping basically at this point that they're going to let him continue to ascend at this point. He did have another 2 assists in the game. It was a 5-1 win. He only played 13-17, but it's kind of a game where they didn't need to press on the accelerator too much either. They were ahead big early, so yeah, I'm not going to read too much into that when he skated 22 minutes the night before. I am going to say that you can drop Connor McMichael and Justin Sordiff. I know this is not going to be a favorite take for a lot of people, especially after what they've done in the last week here. Sort of did have another goal in this game. McMichael had a goal and an assist. Their underlying numbers are still a little bit underwhelming, but they're getting pretty solid minutes here. McMichael's over 20 minutes average time on ice in the last 5 games before tonight's game, and Sordif was about 18 minutes. Sordif was 41st in individual expected goals for per 60 in that 5 games going into tonight, so that's definitely a good number. I'm not saying that you have to drop these guys by any stretch of the imagination, but I am just kind of throwing a little bit of cold water on it, just saying let's be a little bit reasonable here. I don't think this has the earmarkings of a hot streak that's just going to last for the rest of the season. At this point, I think probably there's a few more not so great outings in their future as well. Still a couple of young players and in a good spot right now, but could easily turn south again next week. So I don't know. Can you stomach dropping sort of in McMichael next week, Brian?
Whoa, whoa! You don't think Sordif's going to put up another 5 point night? What? Yeah, no. I'd agree. I think right now the Washington Capitals, their bottom half of their lineup is scoring right now. I know Ovechkin put one in today too, but I guess it's second line, third line has been scoring a little bit here. The top line has not been, and I think that's going to start changing. Obviously, like it's their top line, they're going to get the most deployment, they're going to get the most opportunities. So when that happens, you're going to be happy that you've dropped McMichael and Sordif. But definitely, I'm holding on to Leonard. Definitely, to your point, he is a stud, and I definitely want to keep him on my lineup. And maybe I can say the word definitely one more time. Definitely want Ryan Leonard, but I'm dropping McMichael and Sordif for sure.
All right, last one here is going to be Winnipeg. I am going to say no to dropping Gabriel Velarde. Now, that might seem pretty obvious to some people, but they have been playing with the lines, and Velarde is playing on even strength line with Jonathan Taves and Cole Perfetti,
Mhm.
and that might give some people some pause about his potential to continue to put up points if he's going to sit in that spot. I mean, I will say he did get a couple of assists in the game here tonight, so it didn't seem to affect him too badly. But yeah, Velarde is a guy I just think the body of work is big enough at this point. There's no way I'm dropping him. 72-point pace on the season. I'm not in the business of dropping those guys. I would drop Neil Pionk. We mentioned he's out with a foot injury at the moment, but assuming he's back and healthy for next week, I think you can. He does provide pretty good peripherals, and he's skating 23 and a half minutes a night, so obviously good time on ice to support those peripherals. But yeah, not a lot of points. The underlines are there for him to score a few more points, but if Winnipeg is going to continue to struggle to score outside of that top line, I do think that Pionk is just another guy who's going to be hurt by that. Where are you at with Winnipeg?
Yeah, with Winnipeg, it's a dumpster fire right now. We know that, but they did get a pretty convincing win here tonight. Like you said, Velarde got 2 assists that night, which we like to see. Not on a great lineup, but I'm definitely holding on to Velarde. Anyone else I'm dropping on Winnipeg. I don't like for the most part. I don't really like what I'm seeing out of Winnipeg, but there could be a chance that Velarde gets back up onto that top line. And you got to keep in mind he's also still on that top power play with some very skilled guys in Shifley, Connor, Morrissey to some extent as well. So yeah, I'll hold on to Velarde and I'll drop Pionk.
Sounds like a plan to me. Let's start crossing the streams now. I really feel the absence of Blake for this segment, but we'll power through regardless. We got to start with Edmonton. 5 games played. Only the one off night, as you mentioned, but definitely you got to sit up and take notice. If you can squeeze in all 5 games for a streamer, then that's something you got to be thinking about. Off the top, I think you got to talk about Matthias Ekholm. Obviously, a lot of people are, thin on defense, and so if they're thinking about dropping some of the defensemen we might have mentioned earlier and putting in a guy like Matthias Ekholm, I think that can make a lot of sense. He's only got 2 points in his last 5, but 23 minutes a night, 29th shots per 60, 39th individual expected goals for per 60, and 10th in on ice expected goals for per 60 without top power play time. Pretty impressive stuff under the hood for Matthias Ekholm the last little bit. Doesn't hurt playing with McDavid and Draisaitl out there a fair bit of his time on ice for sure. But Matthias Ekholm is one I'm definitely going to be interested. Vasily Podkolzin, Jack Roslovic might be some other guys you might look at from this lineup. Podkolzin playing with Draisaitl in the last game and seems to have taken a small step, I would say, this year. 19 goal, 35-point pace on the season for him. In deeper leagues, that definitely puts him into streamer territory, so I'm not going to hate on that. Anybody from Edmonton that you're interested in this week, Brian?
Yeah. I'd be interested in Pod Colson as my first look there, and then follow that up and go with Ekholm. And honestly, I don't even think I'd look at anyone else aside from those two, to be honest. So if those
Mm-hmm.
guys get snagged at 3 a.m., I'll be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's head over to Detroit, where Patrick Kane remains available in a lot of leagues. They did do some pretty weird stuff with the power play in this last game. I was trying to figure out what was going on. They started with Kane on the second unit, but then ran a five forward unit later on in the game. And Kane was obviously on it, scored a goal, scored two goals actually. One was an empty netter at the end of the game to get to 500. So congrats to him on that achievement. I'm hoping this just really opens up the season for Patrick Kane. He started kind of slow, then got really hot, and then has gone cold again the last little bit. Dealt with an injury in there as well. I think that Kane still represents a 70-point upside. That's still his point pace. If you go across the 30 games he's played, 26 points, that's a 71-point pace on the season. So still really like Kane. Still my number one hold me segment player with a bullet. Simon Edvidson, Andrew Kopp centering Kane and Brinkett at even strength with 3 points in his last five, and Axel Sandin Pelika on the back end. Not getting a lot of minutes, but does put up some points here and there. And then James Van Riemsdyk has been getting on that top power play as well and does have 6 points in his last five games. So that might be someone that you might look at as well, especially later in the week, as we mentioned, for that Friday Sunday off night schedule. Where are you at with any of these Detroit players? Anybody you want to highlight, Brian?
Yeah, how on earth is Patrick Kane still available? Like
Crazy.
every single week, like who's listening? You guys got to pay attention. Pick up Patrick Kane. Yeah, no, definitely without a second thought, I'm picking up Patrick Kane. I need him on my team. Edvinson, I like what he's done recently, so I'd give him a look as well. JVR on that top power play, he's been pretty productive, and ASP has been decent. I would have no interest in Cop, but I know we'll probably get into it a little bit here. But if you are winning your matchup this week and you want to look ahead at next week, wouldn't be a bad idea to pick someone who plays on that Monday, Tuesday in Detroit. So could be worth a look, especially because Detroit plays that Friday, Sunday as well. But Kane with a bullet's got to be on a roster. He's got to be 100% rostered. He needs to be. I don't get it.
All right, let's continue on. Talk about the Los Angeles Kings. Basically, all the same players we talked about last week, right? You got Doughty. If Kopitar's back, you're thinking about him if he's been dropped. Brant Clark, Alex Laferriere, Andrei Kuzmenko, Warren Fogle are probably the guys that you're thinking about. And as you get into deeper leagues, you might consider a guy like Warren Fogle. Had a goal there in the other game. Takes a fair amount of shots as well. I like Drew Doughty is not scoring points. His underlines actually look surprisingly good. 28th shots per 60, 14th individual expected goals for per 60, 69th nice on ice expected goals for per 60 in the last five games. That still doesn't mean a whole lot to me, especially if Brant Clark is going to take over the top power play, which has been happening, and that's pretty exciting. If you've tuned into this podcast at any point in the last year or so, you've heard me talk about how much Brant Clark could explode at any given moment. He is fifth amongst all defensemen in on ice expected goals for per 60 in the last five games and 19th in shots per 60. Really, really like Brant Clark and would be happy to see him continue to be on that top power play unit. We'll see how it goes. Outside of the defenseman there, though, any of these forwards sticking out to you, Brian?
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention is if you've heard any of the rumblings, Jim Hiller might be on the hot seat. So if
Mm-hmm.
he goes, then that'll shake up the power play. That could be really, really good for a couple of these guys. If you've held on to Laferriere and Clark over this past week right now, definitely I would say to keep holding them. Of the LA Kings, though, there's really only two guys I'd be interested in streaming for this week, and that would be Clark and Laferriere. I like what they've been doing. I like what's under the hood. And I can see some production for them in this week, especially with the Wednesday and Friday off night there.
It's a good point. I will say I would consider Andrei Kuzmenko. It's a tough look because he's either going to score like 4 points in the week for you or he's
Yeah.
going to do absolutely
Yeah.
nothing. So it is a bit of a dice roll for sure. But yeah, he's a little bit hot at the moment, playing on that top power play unit at the moment. So something I might consider, assuming that stays that way when we're making these moves come Monday morning. Over to the Ottawa Senators. Shane Pinto, Claude Giroux, Fabian Zetterlund, Ridley Grieg are some of the names you might be considering there. Shane Pinto did get himself onto the top power play in Ottawa, which is a new look there. Pinto, Stutzla, Batherson, Kachuk up front. So that might be something that you might be interested in. Pinto is playing on a line with Giroux and Grieg as well, which is obviously not the best. You'd prefer him to have some exposure to Batherson, Kachuk, or Stutzla, basically, the other guys on the top power play. But yeah, not happening currently. I am not super excited about anybody aside from Pinto and Giroux. Zetterlund's ice time has really gone down. He was playing with Kachuk and Stutzla for a little bit there and was doing something, but then got bumped off that line and predictably has failed to do anything since that happened. Ridley Grieg has some good underlying numbers: 23rd shots per 60, 46. The individual expected goals for per 60 over the last five. But I feel like that could go away pretty quickly, and so that's a bit of a break glass in case of emergency stream for me. Where are you at with these Ottawa guys?
Yeah, taking a look at these four, Pinto, Giroux, Zetterling, Grieg, I would have really just interest if with a bullet, Shane Pinto, especially if he's on that top power play. I'd also consider Giroux, but this week I'd be staying away from Zetterlin. He's now playing, I think it's on the fourth line, so that's quite the demotion from the first line.
Yep.
So with that in mind, I'm not interested in him, but Pinto's on that top power play. He's got to be rostered. And Giroux's been playing really well. So when you're even looking at your lineups, that like next week they play on the what is that? The Wednesday, and they also play on the Sunday. It'd be lovely to have either Pinto or Giroux. I'd go Pinto one, Giroux two.
All right. Over in Tampa Bay, also a four-game, two-off night schedule as these other teams we've been mentioning. Anthony Cirelli. You can look at JJ Moser on the back end, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Gage Consalves. Sorelli is obviously the top guy here, basically just because of where he's playing right now. He's playing between Brandon Hagel and Jake Gensel, terrific wingers on either side of him. Sorelli's a competent offensive player, I'd say. He's definitely not an all-star offensive player, but going to play for Team Canada, so he does some things well at least. I do like Sorelli for this week. I do think that's a pretty good look. His underlying stats back that up over the last little bit. 43rd in individual expected goals for per 60, 47th in on ice expected goals for per 60 over the last 5 games. JJ Moser just plays a lot and Tampa's hot, so that's kind of the entire process with JJ Moser at the moment. Oliver Bjorkstrand is not playing a lot, under 13 minutes average time on ice, but has 4 assists in the last 5 games, getting most of that by just being on the top power play unit. Engage Consalves has a goal and 3 assists for 4 points in his last five, under 14 minutes average time on ice, but he is playing on that top line with Nikita Kucherov, and I am just generally of the opinion that anybody playing with Nikita Kucherov is probably a guy that you should at least have on your radar for fantasy purposes. Talk to me about what you're thinking about these Tampa Bay
Yeah.
streamers here, Brian.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you're on a lineup with one of the top stars of the league, you generally want to have that guy on your team. But with the bullet, I'm looking at Sorelli, and then the way I'd rank these, I'd actually go Sorelli, then Bjorkstrand, Concalves, and then Moser.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being, I think Sorelli, like you said, very serviceable this week. Bjorkstrand plays on that top power play, so if he's hot and he's putting in points, Tampa's rolling right now. He's someone I want to have on my team, especially for those power play points. And really, if you're looking at Tampa, like if you miss the boat on a couple other guys, there's someone else you have your eyes on. Go after them, and you can always pick up a Tampa guy if they're available for that Friday Sunday stream. So always something to keep in mind there. Some flexibility for your roster, but Sorelli with a bullet.
Love that. All right. One more team that I want to talk about here, just because they do have two off nights. They're the only other team with two off nights. They only have 3 games played, but it is the St. Louis Blues. Over here, you got basically the entire squad, it feels like. Jordan Kyrou, Colton Parayko, Cam Fowler, Pavel Buchnevich, Jake Neighbors, Braden Shen, Jimmy Snuggerud. Name me a player on St. Louis that's not Rob Thomas, and they're probably widely available. And with good reason, because it's been a tough year in St. Louis. They lost again here tonight. But there are some players that I have some at least passing interest in here in St. Louis. It's been a rough go for Jordan Kyrou as of late, about 14 and a half minutes average time on ice. But even in that, he is ranked 29th in individual expected goals for per 60. He's still a guy who can generate offense on his own. And at some point, you feel like that has to come home to roost. He is going to actually get something going. I don't know when exactly that's going to happen, which is the tough part, especially if you're considering streaming him, because there is also a very real chance that he is kind of that Kuzmenko, just gives you zeros if he isn't
Yeah.
lighting it up. So definitely, that's not a locked in streamer who's definitely going to give you something. Pavel Buchnevich is more of that guy just by virtue of deployment. He's just always going to be out there, and so he's probably going to give you something. It'd be pretty rare for him to just totally ghost you in terms of fantasy points on the week. So he's a bit more of that flavor for you. I really am not that interested in Colton Parayko or Cam Fowler at the moment. Cam Fowler is getting power play time, or it was actually. They've switched that. Philip Broberg got power
Oh
play
my
time
god.
in this game here tonight. I just saw that. So that's a new development for the game here tonight. It looks like he was being on the top power play unit with Kyrou, Thomas, Neighbors, and Snuggerud. Yeah, I don't think I would trust that to last more than a couple games, but that is the current update we can give you. So even less interest in Cam Fowler now, that's for sure. Yeah, if Broberg scores a bunch of goals there, then maybe I'd start to consider him for fantasy, but feels like a pretty obvious place where he could just be off the power play unit as soon as the next game. So not going to add him to the list there. Talk to me about St. Louis, Brian. Try to make sense of this mess.
So St. Louis, you take all their names, you put it into a big fishbowl, and you reach around, pull the first name out. That's who you're probably going to want, right? Because St. Louis is a mess. But if
Yeah.
I'm looking at those players, like typically my general rule of thumb, I think, for a team like St. Louis is if I were to pick someone off this team to stream, I want to make sure that if they're not going to score, they're going to give me points elsewhere somehow. So looking at St. Louis, even in between Neighbors and Shen, looking between them, they both hit. That's valuable, especially in a Cats league. But Shen's underlying numbers have been a lot better than Neighbors of late. So of the two, I'd lean Shen. But St. Louis is just so frustrating. Like Kyrou should be a good option. Bushnevich should be a good option. But between Neighbors and Shen, I'd lead Neighbors and Shen. I would lean Shen, and then between Pranko and Fowler, I would not touch them until the end of the week and decide, do I need any sort of peripherals? If that's the case, I'll go with Pareko because St. Louis, they play that Friday Sunday, and that's the way I'd
Yep.
kind of roll these ones.
Makes sense to me. There are 5 teams that play 4 games with only one off night. If that works for your lineup, maybe a defenseman from one of these teams or something like that if you're looking to fill that 4th spot. Buffalo, Carolina, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Seattle are those 5 teams for you. All right, we're gonna get into the dream streams. Before we do, a little Patreon plug for you. Supporter tier, $2 a month gets you Apples and Ginos Patreon League eligibility. Right now, that means you'll get put on a wait list, and if your name comes up the next time somebody abandons a team in the APL, then you'll get in there. Might be able to improve your standing for next year. The Apples tier, $8 a month, gets you APL eligibility. Also gets you access to patron-only Discord channels, making it much more likely that Blake or I will be able to talk to you about any questions you might have. Also gets you access to patron-only live shows, which happen once per month. Gets you access to show notes, including the weekly ad targets that I post in these show notes for this show right here, and also gets you access to the Apples and Ginos player evaluation tool, which you can use to look at Justin Sordoff's beautiful face and even more beautiful stat line over the last 5 games. All right, Brian, are you ready for some dream streams?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. At the top, Patrick Kane. I'm not
Please.
going to say anything
Please.
else. Please, number one, everybody else is several tiers below. But below that, I will say Anthony Cirelli is a guy I'm pretty interested in with that schedule for Tampa this week. Shane Pinto, especially if this power play 1 deployment continues there, I'd be interested in Claude Giroux. And then it's starting to get dicey. We're getting into the Oliver Bjorkstrands, the Jordan Kyrus, Brant Clark on the back end, Andre Kuzmenko, Alex Laferriere, James Van Riemsdyk, Warren Fogle, Gage Gonsalves. Obviously, I'm kind of really just dealing with the two off night teams here to pick these streamers. But yeah, it is a rough look. No two ways about it for sure. Anything with this list here, Brian, that sticks out to you? Any rankings that you disagree with?
Um, I guess I could get a little nitpicky on a couple of the rankings, but
Let's have it.
first and foremost, Patty Kane's got to be one. I would actually put Shane Pinto at number two. Like, first of all, we're going to assume here that you can fit in all these players throughout your lineup. So, keeping that in mind, if you can get Shane Pinto and he has on that top power play, I'd go Pinto one, then Srelly, and then a little bit further down, I'd have Laferriere before Kuzmenko. I think he just gives you more for the week than what Kuzmenko will probably give you because, like we talked about, it's boom or bust with Kuzmenko. But other than that, yeah, I agree with the most of it.
All right. Best for hits, if you are just going at off of the off nights, then Nathan Walker there in St. Louis is a guy who throws the body around a fair bit. Jake Neighbors also there in St. Louis, a good shout. Tyler Clevin in Ottawa. Alex Laferriere is a good stream for Bangers Cats because of his propensity to hit as well. Eric Chernak, Zemjas Gergensons, Alexei Toropchenko, Braden Shen, Mason Appleton, Marco Casper, Mikey Anderson, David Perron, Ben Sherratt. These guys are kind of all in a tier together for me in terms of their hit production. If you can fit all of Edmonton's games, though, I will say you've got Pod Colson there, who has 2.3 hits per game over the last 14 days, and Ty Emberson has 1.5 hits and 1.7 blocks, so a bit of a multi-cat guy that you could look at. If you multiply that by 5, might be a little better than some of the other guys you might be able to squeeze in. Best for blocks, Colton Parayko, if you're just looking at the off nights there, 2.7 blocks per game in his last 14 days. Brant Clark also does this, 2.5 blocks for him in that time period. Simon Evanson, Max Crozier, I think it's Crozier.
I think it's
Crozier or
Crozier.
Crozier?
I think
Crozier.
let's go with Crozier.
We'll go with that for now, and I will get roundly booed by the YouTube comments in the meantime. Charles Edward Dastu, 2.2, and Ben Sherratt here again. Artem Zub, if you're really desperate. Anybody stick out to there from the hits and blocks guys? Anybody that you're partial to, Brian?
Yeah. Actually, well, first of all, how often do you think you have to go look up the pronunciation of someone's name? I feel like every week there's always someone new, and it's like, how do you even say this? You
It's
know?
not infrequent. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Actually, one guy I want to give a quick shout out to for peripherals as a whole, so hits and blocks, because he's been so hot of late, is Matthias Samuelsson.
Hmm.
In Buffalo, they play 4 times this week.
Yep.
I think he's been, if you look at his underlying metrics, if you use the player evaluation tool, you will have known that Matthias Samuelsson, to his standards, he's running red hot. So obviously some regression, but if he's hot, run that, and he gives you some peripherals. So that's who I'd be definitely looking to pick up if you can fit him in your lineup. But again, a couple of the players for hits, Jake Neighbors, we talked about him. Nathan Walker is he's a brick wall. He runs through everything, so I do like that. Braden Shen, I talked about him a little bit. He hits, but he also gives you a little bit more on the underlying metrics right now. So I do like that. For the blocks, Colton Pranko, of course, he's averaging 2.7 blocks a game, which is not nothing. So we love to see that. And then Brant Clark, because you're going to get the blocks, which is great, but there is a lot of there for point upside. So that's the way I would kind of look at those. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, Brent Clark really appealing right now in pretty much every league. Power play
Mm-hmm.
one, getting a bunch of blocks. What's not to love? All right, let's move over to Hold Me. And Brian, I know that you might not be used to this, but this is the segment where we talk about all the players that we would most like to hold, especially, in these winter months. It's cold outside. Just envision to yourself right now, look across your fantasy teams. Who's the player that you would most like to hold moving forward?
Wait,
Uh,
Nate, are you not going to sing the song? I can't. If these are the players you want to hold. Me and Blake here.
I think That would be a bad idea for me to do on a good day, and with me still recovering from illness, this is definitely not a good day. So, I think the people's ears will be spared if I if I decline that request at this point. But yeah, obviously these are players that I'm considering as potential long-term plays for various reasons. Top of the list is Patrick Kane. Matt Zuccarello, 19% rostered, and William Eklund I have up here as well. I think these guys are just being straight up disrespected for what they're
Yeah.
bringing to the table right now. So those are the top guys. I'd have Gabriel Landeskog in there, but obviously he's out. I wish a quick recovery to him.
Hmm.
I'll just read off a bunch of names at this point, and then I'll ask you, Brian, to pick out some that you're super interested in at the moment. Adam Fantilli, Ryan O'Reilly, Anton Lindell, Jared McCann, Elias Lindholm, Ryan Leonard, Jordan Eberle, who's obviously day to day at the moment, as we mentioned, Jordan Kyrou, Luke Evangelista, Jake DeBrusk, Mason Marchment, who's also out, Josh Doan, Josh Norris, Tyler Toffoli, Beckett Seneca, Matt Duchene, and a late addition, Emil Heineman at the moment. Who is sticking out? Who do you want to highlight here, Brian?
Yeah, so definitely Zuccarello at 19% makes absolutely no sense to me. So he's someone I want to hold. Jared McCann has quietly been a point per game player, I think, since coming back. So he's
Yeah.
someone I definitely want to hold. Elias Lindholm, as long as he's getting the deployment, he offers a lot of peripherals as well, which is super helpful. So definitely him. Brian Leonard, Jordan Eberle. If he's available and he's injured, stash him on your IR because he's having himself a season as well, and that's not someone I want to pass up on. And then Josh Norris, I know he has he hit this year? Like that's always been his MO is to hit, and he doesn't hit anything, but he's also almost averaging a point per game. So that is something that I am in on. So I want some Josh Norris. And then lastly here, Luke Evangelista is having himself a year. So I would look to hold on to Luke Evangelista as well.
All right. Yeah, a couple guys I wanted to mention. If you're just looking at like who has the most pure blast off potential rest of season, then I do think Ryan Leonard represents that to me in a lot of ways. Underlying metrics, well, they're not like extremely hot at the moment. A lot of that has just been how efficient Washington has been as a team in the last little bit in my mind. So I'm not too off of that on the season. His numbers look a lot better there. And as I mentioned, it does really seem like they're starting to prioritize him, power play one time, etc. And then also Jordan Kyrou, as I mentioned, I just don't think this guy forgot how to play hockey. I think Jim Montgomery just really hates the way he plays hockey. And yeah, like I said, 29th in individual expected goals for per 60, even while being kind of demoted down the lineup and not getting primo minutes to apply his trade. I think if you're looking at potential guys who could just blast off and be like point per game guys rest of season, I think those two are pretty interesting to me there. I also want to get into some players who are rostered in less leagues, so sub 20% rostered. A few guys that we already mentioned here: Matt Zuccarello, Luke Evangelista, Jake DeBrusk, Marchment, if he was healthy, Igor Chernyshov, Jason Zucker. We will throw Justin Sordoff in there as well. Connor Garland, who should be back from injury relatively soon. Matt Coronado, Ryan Donato, Andre Burakovsky, Teuvo Teravainen, threw in all the Chicago guys there at the end. You can order those as you wish. I think Donato will probably get himself bumped off this list after seeing the lines in the latest game here for Chicago with Bedard back. But of these players, I did want to highlight Jake DeBrusk and the heater that he's been on. Basically, ever since he got scratched, he got healthy scratched. He's just basically turned the lights on for him. Somehow he's remembered how to play hockey. I don't know exactly what's going on for Jake DeBrusk at this point, but I really do think that there's something going on here with DeBrusk at the moment. And he's got 5 points in the last 5 games, 18 minutes a night, sixth in shots per 60, fourth individual expected goals for per 60, 17th on ice expected goals for per 60. His numbers on the season are not actually that much worse: 21st shots per 60, 16th individual expected goals for per 60, and 76th in on ice expected goals for per 60. It's really just been the conversion numbers that have been terrible for Jake DeBrusk to get to this point in the season. And so I think if he's feeling it, he could go on a bender. He kind of did this last year too, where he was cold for a very long stretch and then went on a big time bender for, I think, like 10 or 15 games and then was basically never heard from again. So I'm looking at this as the potential of a multi week bender that Jake DeBrusk could go on. And I want to get in on the ground floor of that. So wanted to shout that one out there. Anybody on the, oh, let me get through the 10% and under rostered players as well. So I'm going to throw out Christian Dvorak, who just continues to produce alongside Trevor Zegras in a pretty locked in role on that line. Alexander Texier, who has now seemingly found a home on the top line in Montreal with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. Scored a hat trick the other night there. Have to be interested in that, I think. Matthias Michelli, Zach Benson, Oliver Bjorkstrand, and Jimmy Snuggerud round out the sub 10% rostered players I wanted to highlight. Who are you looking at from this list, Brian? Sub 20 or sub 10% players, these deeper league players
Yeah.
who you might want to be picking up?
Yeah, first of all, Jake DeBrusk, you're wondering what's happening with him, and I can tell you, he just watched the game tape of Nick Robertson because he says, "Oh my gosh, this guy gets scratched, he comes back and he scores." So he's watching scratch and score. He goes, "That's it's that simple." So
That's how
that's
it
what
works.
that's what DeBrusk is doing. But yeah, I'm looking at this lineup. I'm thinking Jason Zucker. As long as he's on that top power play, I have some interest in him. Matt Coronado, I like what he's done on the season, and then Andre Burakovsky, if he's on that top power play on that line with Bedard, that's super valuable to me. And in the sub 10 category, I'm definitely eyeing Christian Dvorak. As long as Trevor Zegras is playing the way he is and Dvorak is centering his line, he's going to get some points just by association. So
Yep.
I'll be all in on that.
Sounds good. Let's move over to defense. Long term plays there. John Klingberg, as we mentioned, think he'll probably be back sooner rather than later. Only 14% rostered. Artem Levshunov, Brant Clark, Simon Nemec, who returned to the New Jersey lineup this week, Matthias Ekholm, Bowen Byram, Oliver Ekman Larson, Sean Dursey, Mike Matheson, Travis Sanheim, Dmitry Orlov, Zane Perek, and Z Buyum make the list here for me. Chris Letang, Drew Doughty, Vladislav Gavrikov as kind of the safer vets. Gavrikov obviously making it. He's on power play one right now in New York with Adam Fox out. While I don't think that's going to result in a huge amount of production for him, it can't hurt. And so we have to at least take note of that. Sub 20% rostered, you're going to have Klingberg, Levshunov, Nemec, Perek, Gavrikov, Sam Alinsky, I'm going to throw in. JJ Moser, I'll throw in. Pavel Minchikov actually seems to have eclipsed Olin Zellweger in Joel Quenneville's defense rankings currently. It's an interesting choice, I guess, but it's one that Joel Quenneville has been making pretty consistently over the last little bit. And so I do want to highlight that because that's something that fantasy managers are going to want to know. Over 22 minutes a night for Pavel Menchikov the last little bit. And this is a guy who did have a nice little run earlier in his career, kind of in his rookie season, and looked like he might take a step and then seemingly took a step backwards instead of forwards. So it wouldn't be too surprising for him to reclaim some of that former glory, if you will. Tom Willander over in Vancouver. I don't really know how much I really believe this, putting him on this list, but I did want to shout out he is on the top power play for Vancouver currently, and that probably changes pretty quickly, but the underlying numbers don't look too bad. Over 18 minutes a night, 40th shots per 60, 12th in on ice expected goals for per 60, has a couple points in his last 5 games. In 16 team leagues you might be able to do worse than Tom Willander, so wanted to at least shout the man out for what he's doing there. Let's talk about defense, Brian. Anybody from this list, anything with the rankings that you disagree with heavily?
Klimberg, if he can stay healthy, he would be at that number one spot. But I feel like
Yeah.
he's got to get knocked down if he just like you can't rely on him to stay in the lineup. But for me, my number one here is Artem Leshunov. I think as long as he's on that top power play and it's been working, then he's someone I want to have on my team.
Yep.
Jersey for a little bit of a stretch while he's hot or while he stays hot. And then I personally, I don't have any interest in Gavrikov. I know you have him ranked as 16th, and I would have to agree with that. But yeah, those would really be the two guys I look at: Lev Shunov, and then Brant Clark we already talked about, but Lev Shunov and Dursey, I think for me.
Yep. Sounds good there. I do want to just highlight it could be Zane Perek time in Calgary, as we mentioned with Nazem Kadri and him potentially being traded. that might coincide with Zane Perek just being given like a bunch of minutes, including power play one, and being told here, like, make something happen. We saw the talent at the World Juniors. I think he scored the most points ever for a defenseman for Canada at a World Juniors. So their talent is definitely there for Perek, and it might be his time to shine in Calgary sooner rather than later. I don't know what the ceiling truly is there in Calgary because obviously that's not exactly an offensive juggernaut, but I did want to at least mention it. Let's head over to the Nets, where basically the two goalies that everyone hates the most in fantasy hockey are now the goalies performing the best. That's going to be Philip Grubauer and Stuart Skinner. I also have interest in Joel Hofer, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Jake Allen, Jonathan Quick. The Vegas tandem, like with Hart potentially being out for some time, then that gets pretty murky. Akira Schmid could see some time. They'll probably call up Carl Lindbaum. Aiden Hill did practice. I think it was Thursday as I saw the practice update, but there was no real update on what that means in terms of his return to the lineup. So I think for the next little bit, you're probably dealing with some combination of Schmid and Lindbaum, which is obviously not super exciting, but theoretically it's still Vegas and somebody should be a beneficiary there. Montreal tandem, you've got Montembeault at 36%, you've got Jacob Fowler at 26%, you've got Jacob Dobish at 21%. I don't know what to do there. Montembeault has played pretty well, and maybe he'll start to kind of slowly reclaim the net, and they'll figure it out that way. But that could easily go south in the very next game as well. So, very up in the air when it comes to Montreal tandem. If you have to go sub 25% rostered, Grubauer's still at 25%. Hofer's under that number. Artur Shilovs has still been getting every other start there in Pittsburgh at the moment, so might be something you could look at. Pittsburgh is actually still playing pretty well, and they look relatively sustainable to me in terms of the numbers I'm looking at, so I'm not going to hate on that. Levi Merilainen, obviously a tough week for him this week, but who else is going to play for them? They don't have anybody else, so he's going to continue to get a bunch of starts. If you have forgiving goalie settings, then Merilainen could still be a pretty good option. And Colton Ellis, who came back from injury and had a really good start for Buffalo there, he could actually challenge Luukkonen for some time here. Alex Lyon and his return also looming. I think probably Buffalo might be the team to actually make a goalie trade. But we'll have to see how that shakes out. Just want to shout out Colton Ellison having a great game in his first game back. Yeah, I just want to highlight like the one I'm most intrigued by. Like I think Grubauer has actually been good all season and just nobody's been paying attention till now. Now that he's started to kind of go 50-50 with the cord in terms of the start share. But Stuart Skinner has allowed only one goal in each of his last three starts. All wins, obviously. Pittsburgh's playing well. Stuart Skinner has no pressure on him whatsoever. Nobody's asking him, how does it feel to be the worst player on your team every night? These things are not happening to Stuart Skinner anymore. He might just be feeling good, and he might still be, just an average to maybe slightly below average NHL starting goaltender. That might be good enough in Pittsburgh when he's feeling good like this. So just wanted to shout out Stuart Skinner. I'm kind of rooting for the guy. I think he got unfairly dogged at times, and definitely he had some particularly bad blowout games that everybody remembers. And maybe he's not like a goalie that you necessarily win the cup with, but at the end of the day, I still hope the best for him moving forward. All right, I've talked long enough. Brian, talk to me about these goalies.
Yeah.
I know we hate all of them, but tell me who you hate the least.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think this is proof of why we go with the 0G, because why in what world is Philip Grubauer a better goalie than Connor Hellebuck? Like that's kind of crazy. But yeah, I'm looking at a couple of these goalies. I know that Blake talked about Philip Grubauer when you guys had a couple guests on to talk about goalies for this year, and Grubauer, unsurprisingly, actually has been great. So if Grubauer is available, I would love to have him on my team, especially if he's starting to get more starts. I would like that. Definitely, if I'm rolling with one goalie or have no goalies, right? You just change it week to week. Go for Grubauer. As much as I want to love Skinner with the pressure free, I've just seen too much of Skinner to trust him. So me personally, I'm out on Skinner. Um, but the other guy I would be interested in picking up here is actually Jonathan Quick. I think the Rangers have enough skill that he'll get wins. And I think that he's obviously a very, very capable goalie to run as the starting goalie while Shesterkin is out. But one guy I'm definitely staying away from right now for the foreseeable future is anything to do with the New Jersey Devils. So Jake Allen, I'm out on him. They did just lose 9-0 the other day, and then they lost again. So, and I really thought after getting blown out 9-0, they're going to turn around. They're going to win 5-0, and it's not looking good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm staying away from those. Grubauer's number one for me.
Sounds good to me. Order of business to clean up here the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. Blake picked Mason Marchment, and he immediately went on to IR. So it looks like I'm probably gonna cruise to victory with Luke Evangelista here this week. I wanted on the record that we did text about it earlier in the week. I offered him to pick another player. I thought there should be some penalty. Like, this happens. Like, it's happened in the past. I've been burned by it before too. But it's rare that it happens like before the week even starts. It's usually like midweek. You're like, he picked up an injury. So I offered him to pick up somebody. It would have only been for 3 games, but he didn't get back to me. So that was a little bit hurtful. And now I hope that Luke Evangelista just drops 3 points in the next game and absolutely buries Mason Marchman 0 points. All right. We did make some picks for next week as well. I picked Jake DeBrusk. Hopefully Vancouver does well for the next little bit, question mark. And Blake picked Vasily Podkolzin, so he's counting on those 5 games from Edmonton to help him out. Well, Brian, I think we made it to the end of another sterling episode of the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Thanks so much for coming on. What should the people do if they are looking for more of Apples and Ginos? I think they should probably go to the link in the description, click it, join the Discord community. And what else should they do, Brian? What should they do at the end of every video?
Let me tell you, at the end of the video, they should like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, get into the Afrogenos Discord, send us some more messages. And if you are interested in talking trade talks, come to the trade talks as well, so we can get those going too.
Absolutely. Trade Talks going live every Wednesday evening. Definitely something you got to get in your life. Ask your questions about trades, especially this time of year. This is a crucial time for fantasy hockey trades. So get that in there, get those questions in. That is going to be all that we've got for this episode, though. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.